Hi everyone, I'm AuDHD Abi, which is autism and ADHD combined. I'm making a YouTube to try and explain a little bit more about what that is actually, because I think it's still relatively new. There's still people who don't know too much about how AuDHD looks and feels. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 30, and then about 2 months ago, diagnosed with autism. But I knew way before that with autism, I knew maybe for the last 2 years. The more I read about autism, the more I was like, I really don't want another diagnosis, but I can't ignore this any longer. And I was ready to embrace it as well. Because getting your first neurodivergent diagnosis is a lot. It is for some people, it was for me. It took me years to come to terms with it and to really process it and to add more things into the mix whilst you're really trying to work through, make sense of your new identity, your new life, how your brain works, and working back through your whole life and thinking, oh, that's why that happened, and going through the grief and the anger and the relief and huge stuff to process. So yeah, that's why I was a bit late to the party with autism. And I have spent most of my life masking who I really am to fit into society. And so making these videos and trying to give like a really raw, unfiltered version of what these conditions, these co-occurring conditions are like to live with is going to be tricky. I've tried to record this video so many times, and I did an intro video before and then had to take it down because I mentioned something about work that, yeah, now I'm redundant, so I don't have to worry about that. But yeah, it's really hard to just come out and be like, this is who I am after 30 plus years of masking who I am. And masking is very common for people who are diagnosed either from a young age or from late diagnosis, but it's particularly difficult to unpick when you're late diagnosed because you don't know that you're doing it. You don't know how to stop doing it. There's so much shame that builds up over a lifetime of not knowing that you're neurodivergent, because when you don't know you're neurodivergent, it becomes a character flaw, it becomes your fault. All of these things that you do, all of the undiagnosed traits are character flaws. It's your fault. You're the problem. You're lazy. You can't function as an adult. And then the coping mechanisms that some people adopt in order to survive then also pile on to that shame. There's a lot of co-occurring substance abuse, eating disorders, shopping, gambling, yeah, lots of different things that come into the mix. So this compounds the shame. So there's so much to work through. When we get our diagnosis and when we talk about these conditions, because it is very rarely one condition that we're talking about, there's usually either co-occurring neurodivergent conditions alongside, or there are mental health conditions. And there is way more trauma than we realize. The trauma of not fitting into society, maybe being socially isolated, and maybe a lot of these things make us more vulnerable socially, more vulnerable to toxic relationships, environments. If we don't feel like we have options, or we don't know exactly what we're getting into, or maybe we have an unstable situation that we're trying to get out of and we go into another unstable situation. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is it's very complex, and this is why I am doing the YouTube, because I think as much as there's some amazing, really educational and informative and easy to access content on the internet, there's also a lot of nuance that we can talk about when we talk about these co-occurring conditions. And essentially why I'm talking about it is because the more that we talk, the more we understand, the more we can educate, the less shame that we feel. And my hope is that the generation coming after me is not going to be getting to their 30s to get diagnosed. And the people who are still in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s getting diagnosed, that they can start to be themselves and understand themselves to a level where they don't feel shame and they can really find what works for them. So I've qualified as a neurodivergent coach, and that is what I do. I help people with adjusting into how their brain actually works and working through a lot of the shame and the internalized ableism that they have and carry around with them. This is pretty much what I want to do with this YouTube channel. I am an open book, so please ask me any questions that you might have about AuDHD. Whatever you want to know, I'm happy to answer, and I really want to make content that makes sense to people and is interesting, hopefully. So yeah, please get in touch if you want a chat or if you want to talk about coaching. No obligation there. So yeah, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll be posting more videos soon.